Well, if I can build just a little bit on Scott's first point, his first point was essentially like, well, if the cost of a failed belief is very low, then we can see how evolution would select for it, just because there's such a high, such a high reward versus risk on it. And your response seemed to be, yeah, but then we should have some sort of ability to detect when that's happening. And so, what if the response is, well, we do, and we've discovered the hat, and we're well aware of it, and we see this hyperactive agency detection in infants, and so that is a case where we have the defeater because we've been able to identify this through evolutionary psychology and through infant psychology.
You're saying that would be a potential defeater that you're raising?
Well, I mean, not that I'm raising. I'm just saying, like, I could
Yeah.
see how that would be a case where, like, you're saying, well, you need a defeater to say that we see this design behind the world, and I mean, I could see the critics saying, yeah, we got one. Here it
But
is.
you but you'd have to show more than just where it came from. The idea that we are able to detect what we see as agents, in that sense, is not. Yes, it can be over hyperactive, but that doesn't follow that it's like always wrong. I think that we can detect when it isn't wrong. That's kind of the whole point. But that same kind of pattern seeking behavior is what we use in inference of science. When we say, "Oh, I saw that if I shake a tree, the fruit falls, and I can grab it," and I do this a lot, and it happens every time. It be a coincidence? It could be, but it seems obvious. It seems likely to me that that's a direct cause, and that's how we build models and make predictions. And usually they're pretty accurate, surprisingly accurate. How much we can do that. So I think just the idea that pattern seeking behavior can sometimes be hyperactive. Just like you can do this with any sense, you can take an optical illusion and misperceive something with your eyes, but that doesn't mean that we say that therefore eyesight isn't correct, because again, we have the ability to know when it is an optical illusion and when it's not, usually at least. I mean, typically we're able to tell that. So that's kind of the idea we're getting to. So we are able to correct the had when if I'm yelling at my computer, in hindsight, but I would argue that we haven't yet seen a proper and exhaustive correction of religious belief in the general sense, at least not one that's caught on, saving.
Thoughts on that, Scott?
Um, I would try and circle back to the first sort of point of phenomenological conservatism that you raised, where I think in general, or at least I perceive it this way, the inability to reproduce supernatural phenomena is itself a defeater. So somebody claims they are speaking with the dead through a crystal ball, and yet their answers seem to me to be very inaccurate, based on what I know. And so that to me would say, well, they're probably not doing that. And I could apply that in, I haven't extensively studied every sort of supernatural claim, but it seems like that every time I have investigated supernatural claim, it has come down to either being falsified or unfalsifiable. But I've never found one that I consider to be true. And I would find it difficult to understand, like, what does it mean for the supernatural to be true? Because isn't it just simply natural at that point? But that's kind of a broader discussion. But I would say those are the defeaters. Our inability to regularly reproduce supernatural phenomena to me seem like a defeater.
But you said that on the other side that you find them sometimes to be unfalsifiable.
Correct.
You wouldn't present that as a defeater. That would be a defeater of it if it's
That would not be a defeater,
unfalsifiable.
but that would be arguing that essentially every it cannot be differentiated from being false. Essentially, if I throw in a test stick, a toothpick into a vat of acid and a toothpick in a normal glass of water, assuming it's not a strong acid, the toothpick's going to tell me nothing. It's going to stay the same regardless. So the toothpick is not a means of falsifying those. And I can create claims, and this kind of goes back to the mimetic evolution, claims that can survive. Those that are shown to be false tend maybe not to survive, and those that are unfalsifiable tend to perhaps survive. And the problem is, I don't think supernatural claims are verifiable often. Like, I've
You,
never seen one that I've verified, and so I don't know.
you need to go watch. I don't want to plug myself. You need to go watch my presentation on miracles. Then, in terms of like more, and that focused more on like medical, like verified people were prayed for, they recovered, and there was no natural like mechanism to falsify it being something like that. So if you want to see stuff like that, and I know that's not even what I'm talking about in this presentation, but
Yeah,
I agree with the crystal ball stuff. I mean, if someone's like claiming to get direct revelation from God and they say something that's demonstrably false, then yes, I would agree that would be defeated for that particular claim. I wouldn't believe them. And so I will agree to an extent that, yeah, the idea that, oh, God's talking to me and stuff is a little bit unfalsifiable in that sense. But I'm also making an argument for, I make this whole presentation was meant to be an argument to almost falsify religious non-experience, because I think there are beliefs that can't be, my belief in the external world can't really be falsified. But it's in this way where I'm almost trying to falsify the religious non-experience based on this evolutionary selection thing. So that's more what I'm doing in that way. If that makes sense. But if you want like actual, like, more miraculous, more impressive, more direct stuff, then I would recommend looking at the other presentation and following my other work. I'm writing a book on miracles right now. So if that's a topic that interests you, that you would like to look into, I'd welcome anyone to try to give their best attempts to falsify some of the stuff I say. I don't mean that as like a challenge or like a face, like a genuine, like, and it has happened there. I've had doctors looking at it, and there have been times where like, actually, this could be it, and I'm like, oh, you're right, let me take that out or put that in a footnote or something. So I'm open to it. It just depends on what it is. So yeah.
Right. Thank you for listening. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe. Please also look at the show notes in order to find a link to our group so that you can join our next discussion. I look forward to chatting with you.